All right, so I'm just going to run through this really quickly so you guys have a general idea of what's going on, and then I'm going to let you get started on your stuff. So you guys should all have a blank packet, and the first 2 pages should look like this, and then it kind of gets into the project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just walk through the completed version of the first page, and it's also on It's Learning if you need it. But go through some basics. So some information you need to know about college loans and college and the way it works before we actually get into the project is the first thing is that after you graduate, if you go get your 2-year certificate done at a community college or whatever, it's called an associate's degree. If you just go on and graduate from a 4-year university, you get your bachelor's degree. While you were working on a bachelor's degree, you're called an undergraduate student. After your bachelor's degree, if you go on to like a master's or something like that, you're notified as what's called a graduate student because you've graduated. Generally, it requires 120 credit hours to graduate with a bachelor's degree. Generally, classes are anywhere from 3 to 5 credits. Most of them are 3 credits. Most of like your lab classes are up to 5 credits. Rarely you'll get a 4-credit class, but most of them are 3 credits. That's what credit hours is, just how many credits there are for the class. Generally, the way it takes is, in order to graduate in 4 years, you generally take about 15 credits per semester, which is generally about 5 3-credit classes for 8 semesters. That's how you get your 120 credit hours. Every major is a little bit different, but that's generally how it works. The 2 different types of universities is there's private and public. So private universities are fully funded by the student, so it's a lot more expensive. So those are like, Baylor, TCU, those types of colleges. Then there are public universities. So public universities are funded partially by the state government, so they're a little bit cheaper. If you attend a public university in Texas, because that's where you live, you pay what's called in-state tuition. And if you attend one that's outside of Texas, you pay out-of-state tuition. So like I went to Grand Valley and I lived in Michigan, so I paid in-state tuition. If I would have moved, to Texas before I graduated, after I graduated high school and went to a school in Texas, then I would have had to pay out-of-state tuition. So out-of-state tuition is more expensive than in-state tuition. For private universities, it doesn't matter whether you're in or out of state, you pay the same amount. And then the next thing I want you guys to know is with your university, there are different colleges that you have to be accepted to while you're going through your program. So like for me, I was an education major, so I had to apply to and get accepted to the College of Education. If you're an engineering student, then there's the engineering college, the business college, all those different colleges that are within your actual university. It's like different houses, kind of like in Harry Potter. There's Hogwarts as the school, but then there's Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, and Ravenclaw. Yes, I made that reference, and you can make fun of me for it if you want, but Harry Potter's awesome. So there's that. For this project, a couple things we are going to have to assume. One is there's tons of different expenses when you go to college. So there's tuition, room and board, books, all that other stuff, your meal plan. There's a ton of expenses that go into it. For this project, we're specifically only going to be talking about the tuition. So tuition and the fees. So that's pretty much all the places we look up information. You guys are looking up information. We'll say tuition and fees, and we'll have a cost. So we're not going to talk about room and board or anything like that for this project. You're only going to be looking at tuition and fees. So there are also 2 types of loans. There are unsubsidized loans and subsidized loans. So unsubsidized loans have interest added while you're in school. So the interest starts as soon as you take out the loan. A subsidized loan is one that you don't start accumulating interest until after you graduate college. So the subsidized ones are like the ideal loans because you're essentially, you don't start earning interest on it until after you graduate, so it's a better decision if you can get subsidized loans. But not everybody can get all the money they need in this type of loan, so you have to do a combination sometimes. So for the ones that we're doing, you also have to assume that all of our loans are compounded monthly. So we're going to use the compound interest formula that we learned the other day, and we're going to use the correct end value that you can assume because we've talked about it. And then we're going to use the federal loan interest rate of 4.29%. So that's like going to be our R. We're also going to assume that you don't earn any scholarships. Hopefully that's not the case, but that's what we're going to assume for this project because that would add a whole nother complication to it. We're also going to assume that you can get into whatever school you want. And then we're going to use this chart to determine how many years your loan's going to be financed for, so like your time. So you can just use the chart. So if the amount of loans that you end up having to take out from this project are less than $7,500, then you're going to have to finance your loan for 10 years. So that's how long it's going to take you to pay it off. If it's more than 60,000, if it's 60,000 or more, it's going to take you 30 years. So we're just going to use this to gauge that. All right, so that's like the completed form for the first page. So the rest of it, if you go to your next page, it kind of gives you some information, some websites. You can use these websites to find some of this information. I like College Board a lot. It'll have a lot of your information. You can actually create an account on there and do a lot if you guys haven't already. But I use this with my CPM students as well. So if you plan on taking me for CPM, then I would probably just create an account on College Board and just use it. I mean, if not, it's a good website anyway. But it'll have a lot of your information that you're going to need. So the first part is the research part that I was talking to you guys about. So the first thing is you're going to choose some schools. So you're going to choose 3 colleges or universities that you want to attend. So for each of the 3, all 3, you have to answer all 11 of these questions. So where it's at, how much the tuition is, what's required to apply, like do you need your transcript, do you have to write an essay, do you have to have an interview, what all do you have to do, what's the average SAT reading, writing, and math score that they accept, what's the average ACT score, what's the acceptance rate, when's the application deadline, what's the total number of students, faculty to student ratio. This is actually a really big, important one to me. Find 3 pros for attending each university and 3 cons. So why should you and why should you not? So for example, for my top choice, Grand Valley, it was only an hour and a half away from school, or it was only an hour and a half away from my hometown. So it was a reasonable enough distance so I could get away from my family, but I could still come back to visit whenever I wanted. So that would be an example of a pro. A con of one of my other choices, which was Michigan State, was that it was like in the city. It was just kind of mixed in with everything, where the school that I chose, Grand Valley, was kind of separated and it was its own campus that was separate from the city. So that's an example. If you're somebody who doesn't plan on going to university and right away or ever even, and you just want to do a community college and get your associate's degree and then transfer to a university, then the way you're going to do it is you're going to pick your community college and then you're going to pick 2 universities. That way you can do your community college information and then a university that you're going to transfer to. So, but in doing that, you still have to answer the questions, all those questions above, these ones right here, for the community college and both of the universities. I have this sheet for you to list all of those questions out, all those answers. So that's all sitting there for you. Okay, the next part is the math. So that part 1's all the research. So you should be able to get that done today probably, if not by today at home or the beginning of class tomorrow. Next thing is the scenario. This is like the math part of it, okay? So you're going to pick one of these 4, okay? So everyone's going to be in a different situation. So scenario 1 is you pay for 80% of your education using loans, and the other 20% will be paid while you're in school. So this could be like parents or you have money saved or whatever. This is generally the way it works for people. Scenario 2 is maybe you have a little bit, your family has a little bit more money, or you've had some money saved up, is you'll pay for 50% of your college using loans, and the other half you'll pay while you're in school with working or whatever. Scenario 3 is you pay 25% of your education, so you're responsible for 25% of your overall tuition and all that, and the other 75% will be paid while you're in school. And scenario 4 is you pay for your entire education using student loans, which a lot of my friends were in this situation. So you pick whichever one you think you'd be in. Most of you will probably be in scenario 1, but it's up to you what you want to choose. For whichever scenario, just go to the page that you ended up choosing and use that page. So if I chose scenario 4, this is the page that I'm going to work. So all you have to do is answer the questions that are on each of these scenarios, and notice that you have to show all your equations in your work. Okay, so obviously right here there's not really enough space to put all of your work. So I'm fine if you do all of your work on a second sheet of paper or whatever, on some printer paper or lined sheets of paper to kind of keep it organized so so it's not all crowded up and you can just put your answers here. That would be ideal. The next part is part 3. So the conclusion is explain why you chose the college you did. For your first choice school, decide why you chose it and why you did not choose the other two. So you're going to have a top choice. In your conclusion, you should say why you chose that one and not the other ones, and decide how you're going to pay for it. So which scenario would probably occur and why. Go on and explain why you chose to do that scenario. Part 4 is future employment. So what I want you to do is find a detailed job description and the average starting salary for the occupation, or multiple jobs that you think that you might have after you leave college. Give some pictures, some descriptions, stuff like that. And then will your job allow you to even pay your loans back? So like there are some jobs, unfortunately, that don't pay enough or very much, but take a lot of education. So it's essentially like, is it even worth going to school for that, other than the fact that you would enjoy it? So is it financially worth it? So just some information there, and this is a website that you can use that'll have some of those answers. And then the final project you're going to put together on a poster board. So the way this layout's going to be is your top choice is going to go in the middle. The info is those first chunk of questions at the very front page. I'm going to scroll up to show you these ones here. So questions 1 through 9, that's what I mean by info. So on your poster board, under each of your choices, my main choice, my number one choice is going in the middle. Those questions 1 through 9 is going to be organized here in the info section, then the pros and cons, and then choice 2 on the left, choice 3 on the right, with info and pros and cons. The scenario, the one scenario you're choosing, remember, you're only choosing one of the scenarios and doing it for this one college that I chose. That's my top choice. Those answers are going to be here. Now, I don't want you to just staple that piece of paper that you used to the center of this poster board. I want you to organize it so it's neat and looks good and all that stuff. And then I want you to write your conclusion and the stuff about future employment. It doesn't just have to be a paragraph. It can be bulleted. It can be all fancy, done up with pictures and stuff like that. I don't care how you want to do it, as long as it's neat and organized and answers the questions. Now, I'm saying neat and fancy and all that stuff, but it doesn't have to be. Part of your grade will be the neatness and the organization and the visual and all that, but I just want to make sure it's done correctly and that it's organized. Then you also need to make sure you attach your packet and all of your work. Okay, so a couple things. I already told you guys about the due date, but again, it's March 23rd, which is the Friday after we get back from spring break. Counts as a major grade. You cannot turn it in late. It's turned in then or it's a 0, no questions asked. Even if you're not in school, then you got to turn it in the day before, or give it to somebody and have them turn it in to me. Telling you now, there's no exceptions. Okay, so again, a couple things. Having the information about the 3 universities is 25% of the grade. Okay, it's 25 points. The scenario and the calculations, all that stuff that you chose, is 45% of it. That's the meat of it. That's the math portion. If you don't have your work, that does not, that's part of the credit, so you need to do that. Your conclusion is 10 points.